Kristen Holmes is out front. She's live outside the White House. And Kristen, just extraordinary amid so many extraordinary events that are happening, both large and seemingly small. What are you hearing about Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and how unhappy he is about what Trump's doing here?
Yeah, and just to touch on your point, I will get to Scott Bessent in 1 second, but to touch on your point on the extraordinary here, while it is a stunning development, and it's not all that surprising. This seems to have been in the works for quite some time. If you look back in July, we saw Russ Vought, the head of Office of Management and Budget, essentially writing an open letter to Powell accusing him of lying to Congress. We also saw President Trump instilling a number of his loyalists on the National Planning Committee that has since helped when it comes to the ballroom. But initially, that was in part to look into this matter, to look into what was going on with the Federal Reserve building, and to ask a lot of pointed and public questions, which seem to be leaning towards some kind of criminal investigation. Now, Carolyn Leavitt has said that President Trump at no time directed the Department of Justice to open this investigation, but President Trump has made his feelings on Powell incredibly clear. Now, when it comes to Scott Bessent, this itself is not that surprising. Scott Bessent is part of the reason that President Trump had been backing down from that language about actually firing Powell. Yes, he was continuing to over and over again berate Powell and insult him, but he kind of stepped back from that firing talk, and that's because Bessent had been in his ear, essentially telling him it is bad not only for U.S. markets, for the global economy, if you do fire Powell. Even the threats of firing Powell are impacting the markets, and Bessent, I'm told, views the markets as his primary job. Now, of course, if you look at the markets today, it doesn't seem as though they were that affected by this investigation, but I am told that Bessent was talking to people close to him, saying that he was frustrated by this and by the idea of it potentially having a larger global impact. Now, I will also tell you that I talked to a number of aides close to President Trump, as well as allies, who say they swear that this is not political. They believe that there should be some more investigation into this building, into the renovation, and into the budget. But of course, again, President Trump has made it clear how he feels about Jerome Powell in this position.
There are more Republicans voicing their opposition to a criminal probe against Fed Chair Jerome Powell, including the president's own Treasury Secretary. A source tells CNN Secretary Scott Bessent has told people he is unhappy with the criminal investigation opened by the Department of Justice into Powell, and that there are other Republicans who agree.
I don't think Jay Powell's a criminal. I don't like the idea of an investigation, a criminal investigation.
I support the independence of the feds, and I hope that this investigation wraps up very, very quickly.
I will be shocked if he has done anything wrong. The Federal Reserve of the United States and the executive branch of the United States get into a pissing contest. We don't need it. We need it like we need a hole in their head.
Okay, group chat is back. Jasmine, can I start with you? Because sometimes when a source tells, I can't tell if it's because the person in the center of it wants everyone to know this without saying it out loud, or if we really are hearing about some discontent.
Well, I think it could be both, right? I think you've seen Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent be the one person in the cabinet that has registered some minuscule pushback. Obviously, we know that he was involved in the idea to pull back some of those tariffs after April because of some concerns about the bond market, something that we know that President Trump follows closely. In other moments, he has tried to push Trump perhaps in a different, maybe a little bit of a less direction, of course, because of not trying to spook the market and various things. So I think that this is kind of well within the Treasury Secretary's lane. Obviously, he has been trying to plan a way to kind of usher Jay Powell out and bring
but
in.
He's going to be out in May. And so, I mean, the Wall Street Journal, they're calling President Trump would do himself and the country a big favor by firing those responsible for this fiasco. They call it a self-defeating fiasco. The perception is this was necessary, and you've got someone like Senator Tillis saying, well, I'm not going to vote on this other stuff you want approved. I mean, there's just so many people saying don't
that's the
spend your
biggest
time this
concern,
way.
and it's not even Tillis. I mean, I think all of those comments by other Republican senators as well was not as strong as what Senator Tillis said, but the same thing.
Yeah, because
Look,
he's
this
willing
is-
to take action.
Yeah, and he's not running again, and it's a whole different story. We are on the countdown to 4 months for him not to be Fed chair anymore, whether you agree with him or not. And this is an unwanted distraction. I just don't understand what happened.
And is it going to lead him to staying on as governor longer, right?
Right.
There was some idea that he would both step down
As both.
And now people who know Jay Powell say that this is just going to incentivize him perhaps to stay even longer.
Well, the American people are sitting at home going, what does this have to do with anything being cheaper for me? And what are we doing in D.C. when we're invading countries, folks are getting shot in our streets, and now we're going to go after the person in charge of the Fed? Most folks don't even know what the Fed is.
Arguing that it's his monetary policy, it's his policy that
That's
is
hurting,
preventing
yes,
them
that's hurting the
from
policy.
affecting the
But
economy.
you just said he'll be gone in 4 months. This is a stupid move because he's going to be gone in 4 months if he'd have left it alone.
I have a strange
I think it goes
bedfellow for
away
you. Here
very
is
quickly.
Ben Shapiro, co-founder of the Daily Wire.
Is there evidence that Powell was stealing money or embezzling? Well, what is the case here, in other words? And why is it that the Trump administration, the two people who he seems to be focused on very much at the Federal Reserve, are people who have opposed his agenda? This is bad policy. You should not be targeting people based on specious investigations. If it turns out that it's specious, the president should not be intervening in Federal Reserve policy in this way. All it does is create uncertainty in an economy that is doing quite well by all available reports.
Manu, you've been catching up with lawmakers there. What are they saying about this?
Jake, there are a lot of questions from Republicans and Democrats alike, but even House and Senate Republicans, they want more answers about what exactly is happening here and are worried about the implications for the independence of the Federal Reserve if this goes on for too long. In fact, one of the regular comments that I've been getting all afternoon from Republican senators in particular is that they want this done quickly. They want this investigation done quickly. They want to move on. And they're worried about the implications of political interference with this critical agency. That's a message that came from including one key senator, Senator Thom Tillis, who sits on the Senate Banking Committee, which would consider any nomination to replace Jerome Powell. And he's warning he will vote against Powell's successor if this is not done and done quickly. Do you think the White House is trying to stop the independence of the Fed?
Somebody at DOJ. I mean, the president said he wasn't in the mix. Another example of amateur hour, as far as I'm concerned.
Should they drop the investigation?
I'm not going to get into that. What I'm going to do is drop any consideration for any board confirmation until it's done.
And Powell has been actually on the phone with some Republican senators in the last 24 hours or so. Senator Lisa Murkowski, who aligned herself with the concerns raised by Senator Thom Tillis, said that she had spoken with Powell. Tillis also speaking with Powell. And the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, also said that he wants this done quickly. He wants an investigation done quickly. He said he wants to make sure there is absolutely no political interference with the Federal Reserve. That was not the message, though, from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who I asked about this. He said he would reserve judgment on these allegations. He said that if Powell is innocent, that he will essentially be proven innocent. And I asked him about concerns that the Justice Department could be weaponized now that Powell is yet another political foe of the president who is now being targeted by the Justice Department. But Mike Johnson said the Justice Department is not being weaponized, he said, under Donald Trump.